Hello, I'm Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about astrology, Vedic astrology in particular, and also to give you an idea of what's happening over the next few months, and also to give you a projection on what's going to happen to you by individual astrological sign. The main idea of this program is to familiarize people with astrology in general, and a particular subset of it called Vedic astrology. So Vedic has different rules or a different setup than Western astrology does, but it still uses the same signs, pretty much the same planets. There are some variations, and its emphasis is really on prediction. So we'll be looking at certain parts of the world and seeing which parts of the world are going to face good times. But we mostly focus on potential areas or problem areas in the world. And so, and one of the reasons we focus on those is not because we're trying to bring bad news to people, but mainly to forewarn them or to give them some kind of an anticipation that something's going to happen. We've looked at several places. There have been actually several successful predictions that have come out of the show. We had discussed in earlier episodes some problems in Turkey, in Australia. I was actually surprised to see the Australia lines, but over the events of the past few months, what's coming on the news, Australia's in a lot of trouble lately with all the brush fires, and so that showed up on the astrocartography a few months back. So all these things tend to work according to a sequence and according to where these lines intersect with the Earth. And the rationale for astrology is not really that it's the main rationale that I use for it, so I don't need any kind of let's say a causative effect. I can just look at it and say the evidence is that by and large it works. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but none of the predictive sciences work 100% of the time. Economics certainly doesn't. So essentially what we're looking at when we're looking at astrology is we're looking at a pattern or a sequence of possibilities. And believe me, no matter how much anybody says the person is predestined to do this particular thing, the person is meant to be in this circumstance, you always have the element of free will. Certain planetary placements make certain things easier for you to do, definitely. And they'll make other things tougher for you to do, but and there'll be certain things we just say we have no feel for that, we have no interest in that, and that'll be astrologically determined as well. But when you're looking at a chart and you're looking at people's failures or successes, unless there's something like a large catastrophe, a lot of that responsibility rests with the individual. It's not the stars dictating failure or success. It's really you. It's really your life is up to you, okay? And some of us start off with larger bank accounts. Some of us start off with smaller bank accounts. But what you make of your life is largely up to you, okay? So that's both terrifying and reassuring to a lot of people. There are a couple of big events that have happened astrologically as I'm speaking. This is January 24th, 2020. We passed into the new year, and a couple of exciting things are happening right now. In Western astrology, although Eastern astrologists would pay attention to this as well, the sun's sort of like lined up almost exactly with Sirius right now. So that's actually a good success indicator. The sun is also about to change signs, or actually it has changed signs, It's in Sagittarius right now. Or it's in Capricorn right now. I apologize. It's in Capricorn right now. And at least in Vedic astrology. And that marks the beginning of the Hindu New Year. and that would have occurred around January 15th. The other really important transit, which is occurring today as I'm speaking to you, is that Saturn is going into Capricorn. So for many people over the past 3 years, they've had a horrible time of it. So let's say for a person who has a Gemini or a Sagittarius sun, or a Gemini or a Sagittarius moon, or even a rising sign, they've just had a nightmarish time, because not only has Saturn been in that particular sign, but Rahu and Ketu, that is the north and south lunar nodes, Rahu has been in Gemini and Ketu has been in Sagittarius. So that particular transit, Saturn and Ketu, is a really destructive transit. It does free up people a great deal, but I have seen, as I've said before on this show, I have seen so many relationship breakups over the past couple of years, especially for people who have planets in that particular sign. I've seen job losses. I've seen just a lot of upsetting things happen to individuals with those planetary placements. The good thing about this is you'll have a lot of opportunity to make your dreams real when Saturn goes into Capricorn. Saturn is, I think, a misunderstood planet in astrology, because there are certain transits or certain planetary transits, that is when the planets move to certain places, that are feared in Indian astrology. One's called Sade Sati, and that's called a 7.5-year period of Saturn. Myself, I just entered that around December 26th, and that coincided with an eclipse, and we just had an eclipse January 10th, and a lot of people had a lot of upsetting things happen to them around January 10th. But Saturn also has the magnificent ability. It's the most real of the planets. It's the most concrete of the planets. So let's say there's some large goal or a dream you're thinking about. That's under Jupiter's domain. Jupiter will have, or Venus's domain. Mars will bring short-term bursts of energy. That's what Mars is good for. And it'll give a lot of determination and ability to pull through. Saturn delivers. Saturn gives birth to things. Now, again, it can sometimes do it harshly. So let's say if you're really dying to get into a new job, what it'll do is it'll take the old job away. If you're really dying to get into a new relationship, or you really want to get into a new relationship, or you want to find personal happiness, it may take away things that are obstructing you from that particular pathway. And sometimes it does it pretty horribly. So sometimes you'll lose your job. Sometimes you'll experience an illness which will make you more spiritually inclined. Sometimes you'll experience financial issues which will cause you to resort to a different lifestyle. But it also presents marvelous opportunities, because those things you've been dreaming about doing over the past couple of years, when Saturn's been in Sagittarius, and you feel like you couldn't quite do them because, I don't know, you have some reason not to do it, or Ketu's been confusing you about whether or not you really want to do it, or Rahu's been making you say, well, I really want something else. That obstacle will start to disappear over the next 2.5 years. And you'll start to find yourself manifesting certain things in your life which will actually be very, very positive. And you'll find yourself actually getting what you want. That's interesting. The careful thing, the idea about Saturn, though, is you can't be wimpy when Saturn's around. You can't be like, oh, whatever happens to me, happens to me. I don't want to fight back. You absolutely cannot do that. And I'll tell you the main reason why. Saturn gives, but it expects work in return. So as a planetary entity, Saturn will produce results for you, but it will expect you to work. And in order to accomplish anything, I think all of us know this, you have to work, you have to commit to something in order to accomplish anything really solid or lasting. And so Saturn will actually put you into maybe a little bit of an overwork mode. You'll have a lot of problems come up that you have to resolve before you get to this new point in your life. and Saturn will start to expose these over the next few months. So if you see things sort of like getting a little bit rickety, that's actually not a bad thing. That's actually a good sign, because it's actually a sign that you're going to get some delivery on things you actually want to have happen in your life. So essentially, Saturn is not really, none of the planets are inherently evil or bad. Saturn gives a lot of work. If a person is willing to work, Saturn will absolutely deliver. If you're not willing to work, Saturn will say, well, I brought you this, but I brought you this piece of equipment, but you have to assemble it. If you don't assemble it, it won't work. So you're going to have to assemble this particular piece of work. So essentially, it's going to require effort on your part. I'm not saying this to be preachy, but that's really what it'll do. But it'll bring good opportunities to you. Actually, in the long term, Saturn's opportunities are good opportunities. It's not really, and again, it's not really punishment if it clears away a problem or if it opens a new door for you. And I think one of the things that people get really confused about is that Saturn takes away us, but it also gives. It'll also allow you to receive. Okay, so this particular transit of Saturn and Capricorn is very important. Jupiter and Ketu will be alone, but there'll be planets crashing into it. The most important one of which is around February. Mars will go into the same sign with Jupiter and Ketu, and that will be actually kind of a difficult month because Ketu likes to fight. So essentially, what we're looking at is, or Mars likes to fight. So you'll have a lot of angry energy in late January, or in February, actually, excuse me. And I think one of the things to do is to figure out how to use that energy to focus on what you want, to focus on discipline. Let's say even if you want peace, Mars with Ketu can make a person like really energetic about either going to the gym or doing yoga or meditating or those kinds of things, things that you would need to do in order to get calmer or more or less or more content, excuse me. And essentially, this is a way to use planetary energy. There are certain gemstones you can wear that can propitiate Saturn. Actually, not gemstones, but iron rings. They're relatively cheap. You can buy them online. They're about $10. And there are certain remedies you can do connected with Saturn, like putting, and these are like offerings that are traditional offerings. So getting some black dal or black lentils, mustard seed oil, iron nails, and putting these all in a bag, and new black cloth, excuse me, and putting these all in a bag and offering it to a river. So essentially, and you can think of something less dangerous to the marine life than iron nails, but those are essentially considered traditional remedies for Saturn if Saturn's getting to be overwhelming for you, and you want to hold on to some things. You don't want to let them go, but you still want to accomplish your dreams. So all these things over the next few months, you'll feel those. I'll talk about the Chinese New Year in the next video. It's the year of the rat, and this is actually the beginning of the Chinese cycle in the Chinese horoscope. So actually, the rat opens a lot of doors, a lot of opportunities. So it's not dissimilar to Saturn coming into Capricorn, but the cycles are a little bit off. And you'll see over the next year a lot of changes, and I don't think so much so in government, but I think you'll see them in terms of people actually starting to work on things, personal dreams or professional dreams in particular, because Saturn's a work planet. Now let's look at the chart for the world right now, and we'll get an idea on where some problems are going to be popping up over the next few months, okay? But this is a very important transit only happens once every 30 years. I can tell you, having gone through 2 already, they're not bad transits, not at all. They can be challenging. I'm not going to lie to you, but essentially, I moved from my hometown of Fall River to New Bedford during my last Saturn transit. I started to get some recognition as an astrologer during this last Saturn transit, and so it isn't, like I said, it isn't entirely negative. There are so many good things you do, and when I look back, the things that were less pleasant, they were my responsibility. They were things that I had done wrong. Okay, so essentially, as I'm looking right now, Sun, Saturn, Mercury, and Moon are all in Capricorn. Jupiter and Ketu are in Sagittarius, and Mars is in Scorpio, which it will remain for a few weeks. And if I look at the world map, I'm seeing some difficult lines over Washington State, which I understand has been having some problems lately. There's a Sun and Mercury line over Washington State, and some Rahu lines over northwest Africa, roughly around Morocco. And if I look carefully, there are some Saturn lines close to Washington, D.C., but not quite in it. And there's a Rahu line going from essentially Canada, roughly through Michigan, Illinois, and down to Louisiana. And let's see if anything's happening so Rahu lines will cause disrest or upheavals for people. Mars lines can cause fires, so that's going through all the way from Idaho down to Baja California, or can cause eruptions. Rahu lines can cause essentially catastrophes. So there's one right in the middle of the country, like right down, and it can also cause some civil unrest. We also have in Turkey, let me look at Turkey right now, there's a Mars line sort of near Greece and near Turkey. So there has been an earthquake in Turkey over the past couple of days, but it's far away. The Mars line is far away enough from Turkey that I don't think anything significant is going to happen there. There's a Mercury line, which has to do with communications, going through Western Africa and Madagascar. And there's another Mars line going up through Australia, so these fires aren't going to be over with for a while. The major Rahu line that I see in the chart is actually going through just east of India. It looks like Cambodia to me, and and through parts of China and Russia. And we also have a Mercury line going through Japan, so there'll probably be some disruptions in communications in Japan. If I'm looking, and also Saudi Arabia, there's a Mercury line going through Saudi Arabia, and we just found out about Jeff Bezos' email being disrupted. So critical parts of the globe to watch over the next few months or so would be Washington State, Canada, the section of Canada over Michigan, Illinois, Louisiana, and also parts of Guatemala. And also there's a Mars line going through Australia again, but also a Rahu line going through South Asia, especially the area, like I said, right in between India and China. So that there may be some contested property, or there may be some threat of war in that part of the world. Always when predicting war, there's a little bit of a hesitation on my part, but certainly some conflicts. And also some communications issues going up all the way through Japan, but also a lot around the Middle East. So I'm not seeing any major catastrophes like a war breaking out with the United States anytime soon. But I am seeing some potential conflicts happening. I'm seeing hostilities continuing in Syria, but also some potential conflicts happening in the area, like right between India and China. So I'm not sure who's going to start that. I'm not sure whether or not it's going to be a small country or a larger conflict. But those are the problem spots. Now, over the next month or so this will probably be broadcast sometime in February. Over the next month or so, we're looking at Aries essentially having a lot more commitment to its career goals. It'll be focused exclusively on its career goals, get unexpected breaks. So that'll be good for Aries, because Aries has been working very hard this past year, and it's gone so far, then all of a sudden it gets cut off. So we'll be able to make long-term career goals much more solid. For people with Sun in Taurus, and again, this is May 15th to June 15th, so we're not talking about Western astrology. People with Taurus, luck will solidify. They'll start to get their luck more solid. They'll start to focus more on education and learning. That'll be very good for them. They will have some debts or problems with relationships, so you're going to see that shift slowly but surely from relationship problems happening with Gemini and Sagittarius to Taurus and Scorpio by the end of the year. So this year overall will be relatively good for Taurus. Some arguments with spouses, and that's not atypical, but basically over the next month, just be careful about getting into too many fights. Gemini is still in a little bit of a conundrum because it has, and that's June 15th to July 15th, because it has Rahu in the first house. So it's going to feel relatively dissatisfied with how its life is structured, and it's going to want changes. But also, there'll be a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of ambition in this sign. And you'll start to see relationship partners actually start to give the money that they owe people, and so it'll be tough on the relationship partners' finances, but you'll actually see them get unexpected benefits or unexpected gains. So that's for Gemini. For Cancer is going to be having an interesting couple of years, mainly because Saturn just moved into his 7th house, and essentially what that does, it does give commitment in marriage, but it makes married life very hard or very much of an adjustment because Saturn's in the 7th house. So essentially, it'll be relatively secure for Cancer, and that's between July 15th and August 15th. But also, like I said, a lot of not really the best environment in relationships. A lot of pressure on that sign, but also a lot of ability for spouses to work hard and get things done, but also they have to watch out for their health over the next year, if I'm perfectly honest. It won't be anything major. It'll be peculiar little illnesses, but that is one of the conditions. And also more competition in the workplace. But again, not necessarily a bad combination. For Leo will actually have a chance to be more competitive, to grab for its goals just between August 15th and September 15th. And they'll actually manage to reach a lot of their goals over the next year. And this Saturn transit is actually very positive for them. It'll make them much more aggressive and much more putting their nose down to the grindstone. For Virgo, more opportunities for study, increases in luck, but again, the increases in luck will come as a result of the person ferreting them out and actually working hard to do it. Mars is in the 3rd sign, so this sign will become much more ambitious, much more ready to travel, much more ready to make breaks than it has been before. not quite as conservative as it has been. And Virgo is a changeable sign, so whenever you see a changeable sign, like Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, that doesn't mean that they're wimpy. It's just that they change their goals and they think a lot about their goals. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to do that. However, in the long run, what happens is they start vacillating a little bit. So the attention span starts to get off focus. So, but this year they'll be very, very focused. They'll be very, very solidly based in what they want, and they'll be very, very committed to working for their goals. Libra has potential. That's October 15th to November 15th. Has more potential for money making this year, especially through land or property, or especially through siblings. And they're also going to be much more willing to take chances, much more optimistic. Fourth house Saturn, there's some possibility they'll move, or they'll have to do some major renovations on their house. And for Scorpio is full of energy right now. Is going to have a lot of money-making opportunities over the next year or so, and you'll start to see that manifesting very, very strongly around September. But definitely a good money year for Scorpio. Relationship-wise, actually good as well, but some changes in relationship towards the end of the year. And doesn't necessarily mean a divorce, but the relationship partner may be a separation of the relationship partner, maybe spending more time away from home, those kinds of things. For Sagittarius, actually the start of a good year for this sign for the first time in quite a few years. But basically the only caution is there'll be some over-optimism or some over-ambition for the sign, at least initially, and money will be tight, a little bit tighter than that particular sign would like it for the first few months of the year at least. For Capricorn, a lot of work, a lot of discipline, a lot of fulfillment of goals for this particular sign. And you'll see this sign actually reaching out much more so than it normally does, taking on more duties, and the overall environment just calming down a lot. So that'll be good. For Aquarius, the Lord of the first house is in the 12th house, but Rahu's in the 5th house. So that's the co-ruler of Aquarius. So it will require this sign to travel a lot. It will require this sign to actually start to make good on what it's been talking about doing for the past couple of years, and actually expanding itself. So it has possibilities in media, possibilities for money, possibilities for travel, all coming for this sign over the next year. And this will be particularly strong over the next few months. For Pisces has a lot of work opportunities going up, fewer friendships. In all honesty, Saturn will enter its 11th house, aspecting the first house. So friendships will not be quite so beneficial, or friendships will require the person to work much harder. But if this sign is willing to work, it will move mountains. It's going to be a relatively good couple of years for a lot of signs. And the reason I'm saying it's good is because he'll be able to stabilize and plan, unlike the situation over the past couple of years. So the past couple of years we were saying like, yeah, breakthrough, I want something different in my life, but I don't know quite what. This year it'll be like, I know what I want, I'll know how to get it, and I'm gonna get it by God, unless I chicken out, okay? So it's up to you. You know, that's the main thing I'm emphasizing here. It's up to you. No problem, no matter how big, can be resolved. And you can use the gemstones that they recommend in Indian astrology, but there's no power quite like the individual. There's no power quite like the ability of the person to look at a situation and say, this didn't work out exactly the way I wanted it to, but you know what? I can change. I can get what I want. I can do what I want. I just need to know the right tools to work in my favor. So that's it for this week, and I'll see you very soon. And I want to wish you a lucky, lucky year, and that's all. Namaste. If people do want readings, you can contact me with the information at the end of the program. And it's a good year to plan things out. Okay? Again, namaste. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you soon.